All right, let's dive into one of ancient India's most radical and honestly most misunderstood philosophies, Charvaka. Now, these guys are often painted as just being all about pleasure, but trust me, they were so much more. This school of thought, it literally shook the foundations of religion and metaphysics for centuries. So how'd they do it? Let's get into it. So this quote, "While life remains, let a man live happily, let him feed on ghee even though he runs in debt." This pretty much sums up the stereotype, right? It's the classic eat, drink, and be merry vibe. And yeah, it's a super provocative statement. It's exactly this kind of thinking that got them slapped with labels like heretic and hedonist. But here's the thing. Was it really that simple? I mean, what if that whole live for pleasure thing wasn't the start of their philosophy, but the logical endpoint? What if it was the conclusion they reached after tearing everything else down with some seriously radical doubt? That's the real story we're digging into today. Okay, so to really get the Charvakas, we can't just jump to the party hard stuff. Nope. We have to start at the very beginning, with the absolute foundation of their thought, how they defined knowledge. Their epistemology. Seriously, this is the key that unlocks their entire worldview. You see, every philosophical system has to answer one massive question. How do we actually know that something is true? And most other Indian schools had a whole toolkit, right? They'd accept knowledge from direct perception, from logical reasoning, from sacred texts, the whole shebang. But the Charvakas, they came along with an answer that was, well, it was shockingly simple and totally revolutionary. And here it is, the big one. For the Charvakas, there was only one valid way to know anything: direct perception. Pratyaksha. That's it. If you couldn't see it, hear it, touch it, taste it, or smell it with your own five senses, then you couldn't be certain it was true. Full stop. Everything else? It's just a guess. And this is where they really threw a wrench in the works. Think about it. Almost every other philosophy, then and now, relies heavily on inference, seeing A and concluding B. But the Charvakas said, nope, not good enough. They saw it as totally unreliable, calling it a leap in the dark. Why? Because you're jumping from something you know to something you can only assume. And this classic smoke and fire example just nails their argument. Okay, follow me on this. You're looking at a mountain in the distance, and you see a plume of smoke. So you think, there must be a fire. Makes perfect sense, right? But a Charvaka would stop you right there and ask, are you 100% certain? Like absolutely certain that wherever there's smoke, there's always fire. Could it be fog, steam from a geyser, a chemical reaction? You just don't know for sure until you go over there and see the fire with your own eyes. Without that direct perception, it's just a probability. It's not knowledge. So if you stick to that rule, only perception counts, the consequences are, well, they're huge, absolutely massive. It forces you to ask a really profound question. What does the universe look like if you throw out everything that you can't personally see, hear, or touch? Well, here's what happens. All the big concepts, the absolute pillars of traditional religion and philosophy, they just, poof, they're gone. A soul, or Atman, separate from the body? Can't see it. God or gods? Can't perceive them. Heaven and hell? Nope. Karma, reincarnation? How could you possibly observe that? For the Charvakas, the point wasn't even that these things were wrong necessarily. The point was they were fundamentally unknowable. You just can't make a knowledge claim about them. So if you get rid of all that, what's left? What is the world actually made of? The answer is simple. Just matter. For the Charvakas, reality was built from only 4 elements because those are the only ones you can perceive: earth, water, fire, and air. And that's it. Everything in existence, from a pebble to a person, was just a unique combination of these 4 basic ingredients. Okay, but what about consciousness, right? What about our thoughts, our minds? This is where their thinking gets so incredibly modern, it's kind of stunning. They said consciousness isn't some ghost in the machine, some separate soul. No, it's an emergent property. Think of it like this. Grapes aren't intoxicating, yeast isn't intoxicating, but when you combine them in just the right way, you get wine, which is. Consciousness, they argued, is the same. It's a special property that emerges from the complex combination of earth, water, fire, and air in our bodies. And when the body dies and those elements break apart, consciousness just winks out of existence. And so now, finally, we can go all the way back to that quote about pleasure and debt. See? With this purely materialist universe as the backdrop, their ethics suddenly make a whole lot more sense. It's not just mindless partying, it's actually a perfectly logical, rational conclusion to their entire philosophy. I mean, really think about it. If there's no soul, no gods, no karma, no reincarnation, then this life, right here, right now, this is all you get. There's no round two. This physical, material existence is your one and only shot. So if that's the case, what else could the goal of life possibly be other than to maximize your happiness and minimize your suffering while you're here? Now, hold on. This doesn't automatically mean it's a free-for-all. A great way to get some nuance here is to compare them to the Epicureans over in ancient Greece. The Epicureans were also materialists, but their goal was ataraxia, basically tranquility and freedom from pain, a calm life. The Charvakas were a bit different. They aimed for sukha, the active enjoyment of the tangible, sensual pleasures of the world. Their whole vibe was way more worldly, more practical, and honestly, more defiant. It was a full-throated celebration of being alive, pushing back against anyone who said you should deny yourself. So you have this incredibly radical, challenging philosophy. What happened to it? Where did it go? Well, that's where things get a bit mysterious. We don't actually have their original writings. Their main text, the Brihaspati Sutra, is completely lost to history. The reason we know anything about them at all is, kind of ironically, from the people who hated them the most. We're reading the arguments of their opponents, who would first lay out the Charvaka position in order to tear it down. So, for centuries, the official story was that the Charvaka school just faded away, probably stamped out by religious orthodoxy sometime in the 12th century. But is that really what happened? Nope, not even close. Turns out, this way of thinking was way too stubborn to just disappear. Get this. In 1578, that's nearly 400 years after they supposedly vanished, we have records of Charvaka thinkers showing up and debating at the court of the great Mughal emperor Akbar. And it doesn't stop there. A bit later, Jesuit reports and European travelers started writing about these Indian materialists, and those ideas made their way back to a Europe that was just about to have its own age of enlightenment. Crazy, right? But their impact goes even deeper than just philosophy. By constantly hammering home the importance of direct evidence and rational doubt, the Charvaka spirit basically helped create an intellectual environment in India where science could really thrive. I mean, look at someone like the legendary mathematician and astronomer Aryabhata. This is the guy who figured out the Earth spins on its axis and came up with scientific explanations for eclipses, flying in the face of religious myths. And what was his core method? That all true knowledge has to be based on observation. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? It's pure Charvaka. In fact, it was said that Aryabhata's followers believed that that which is not reached by perception is not knowable. It's almost a direct quote. Which brings us to a really cool final thought. The story of the Charvakas is this powerful reminder that you can't easily kill an idea. You can burn the books, you can condemn the followers, but a powerful idea, like trusting your own eyes and asking hard questions, can go underground, survive for centuries, and pop up in the most unexpected places. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other so-called lost philosophies are still out there, secretly shaping our world?